awesome. Well, we can go ahead and kick it off. Thanks everyone for joining us today for our June monthly training session. We are excited today to dig into Ambition Scorecards, kind of a original foundational piece of Ambition that still drives so much value for our customers. So we're going to dig in today on what a scorecard is, how you can set up a scorecard, some kind of advanced tips and tricks. If anyone here on the call has questions or even has thoughts about how your team leverages scorecards, would love to share them. And yeah, so speak up, go drop it in the chat, drop it in the Q&A if anyone does have any thoughts or questions or anything to go along with today's topic. So as usual, we'll do a little welcome to the webinar series, an overview of what we're doing here, and then we will dive into our topic, Ambition Scorecards. We will highlight a few of our latest, most exciting product releases, and then we will open the floor to a Q&A. The Q&A portion does not have to just be about scorecards. We are here to chat anything Ambition. So if there's anything specific that you want us to dive into or questions you want answered, please feel free to put those in the chat at any time. So brief introductions, your Ambition team that you've got here today. My name is Emma Hamilton. I am the Director of Customer Experience at Ambition. So working along our awesome customer success team, implementation team, and support team to work with our great customers. And then Nolan, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Nolan Alt. I'm a customer success manager here at Ambition. I'm looking through the customer list. Maybe some of y'all can't recognize anybody on there yet, but if I haven't met you, yeah, might have seen me on some of these webinars. I've been with Ambition for quite some time now. Used to be a seller as well, so love this tool. Love the customers I work with, and if I could be any help to anybody, please let me know.
Awesome. All right, down to business. Little bit of an overview of what we're doing here. So each month we host this training series where we deep dive into an area of the platform. All of our previous training resources can be found on the landing page for this program. And also if you register for the series, like all of you have here today, you should receive the recording and any of the materials as follow-ups. So yeah, monthly sessions. It's open to everybody. So if you have any colleagues or maybe people that you lead that you think could benefit from joining and learning more about Ambition, please feel free to invite anybody. You're registered for future sessions by being here today, but you can spread the word by sharing the registration link, and we can make sure that that is available in the follow-up email. Next month, our session will be on July 8th at 3 p.m. Central, and we're going to be going over workflows. So very exciting stuff. Great. But today we're going to be chatting about scorecards. So again, I know a lot of you on the call here probably already use scorecards or maybe are thinking about refreshing your scorecards. Would love to hear from you guys, any questions you have specifically, or like I said, any thoughts on what's worked well for your teams and the impact scorecards have had. But a brief overview of what scorecards are. What is an Ambition scorecard? It is a two-sided scorecard measuring activities on a shorter time frame, usually a day or a week, and objectives on a longer time frame, so a week, a month, a quarter. So it's a dual component scorecard. The weighted metric categories allow you to emphasize the most valuable behaviors that you want your reps to focus on. So you kind of got your list of key performance indicators, but that weighting allows you to really communicate to your teams what they should spend their time and efforts on. And the scorecards are a 0 to 100 plus point scale, keeping reps reaching for the green. I always say it's kind of like a test in high school. You want to get 100% A plus performance. As you can see, if your configuration calls for it, your reps can even exceed the 100%. But ideally, a 100 on the scorecard means that rep is reaching your expectations for their performance. And we kind of like to think of it as like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch for a sales rep. So that I know really resonates with people, and they can get really motivated with wanting to stay in the green and not letting their numbers drop to the orange or the yellow. Yeah. So for your reps, what a scorecard can do for them is it gives them a picture of what good looks like. So you as a leader get to outline, hey, these are the daily expectations, these are my monthly expectations, and your rep with kind of no questions asked knows exactly what's expected of them. What are their expectations, and then how are they pacing towards their targets. So on a daily basis, it might help them organize and structure their day. On a monthly or quarterly basis, it might keep them on track with longer progressing targets, so that they have a clear understanding of where they are. For your managers, the scorecards can give an indicator of who might need help today or this week. If a manager digs into the team's scorecard and sees that on calls, one specific rep is at the bottom, they might be prompted to reach out and offer some support, offer some help, see what's going on, and really get ahead of some potentially downtrending behavior in order to course correct early. Who's on track to reach quota. So again, those monthly or quarterly components of the scorecard, allowing the manager to see that pacing and that tracking to see, mid-month or maybe 3/4 of the way through. Okay, what's it looking like? We're going to get to who might need some help to get over the finish line, who maybe is already crushing their goals, and we should go ahead and celebrate them early. And then how effective are my reps? This is maybe my favorite use of the scorecards. And that is where you can take the activity score and the objective score and really analyze them together to understand um, the effectiveness or the conversion that that rep is how they're performing. And so to kind of go over that a little bit more, we'll go over each element of the scorecard and then how you can monitor that efficiency or that conversion. So first, the activity scorecard, part one. So like I said, it's a shorter time frame, so daily or weekly, you get to decide what makes most sense for your business. I've seen it both ways. Maybe your reps are tracked more on the daily. They have daily targets for things like calls, emails, stuff like that. Maybe your reps have a bit of a more flexible week, and those types of activities are tracked on a weekly basis, and they kind of control which day they focus on each behavior. The goal of the activity scorecard is to measure activities or leading indicator metrics. So those top of the funnel metrics, stuff that's really in their control. Your goal with the activity scorecard is to only have metrics on here that your reps can absolutely execute every single day. When we start to think about those lagging indicator metrics or the results, a lot of that stuff has a lot of factors playing into it. So maybe that's closing a deal. As we all know, there's a lot of steps and a lot of things that can happen that go into closing a deal. But when we start talking about top of the funnel, making a phone call, your rep has the power to pick up the phone and make a phone call every day. And so those are the types of metrics that we would encourage you to have on the activity scorecard. So ideally, when you're looking at the trending performance of someone's scorecard, you're looking at more of an effort um, quota versus an outcome. So as we're looking here at Adela, it's one of our sample users. Yesterday, she had 100%. Today, she was already at 81%. But as we kind of start to look back in her trends, we see kind of a low of 71. That might stand out to me as her leader that she maybe didn't give her all that day. We might want to check in and see what's going on there. Typically, the activity scorecard's around 5 to 7 metrics, whatever makes sense for your business, but really keeping it as concise as possible so that your reps know exactly what to focus on instead of having a million different options in front of them. Some popular metrics that we see on the activity scorecard are things like calls, emails, talk time, contacts created. Like I said, those are really top of the funnel, stage one behaviors. But some great activity metrics that you might want to consider if you're kind of looking at revamping your scorecards is something like quality calls. So maybe that's calls that connect and have a talk time of over 20 seconds. Or calls to named accounts. Maybe there's a specific strategic list of accounts that your reps are targeting. And a call to one of those accounts or a connected call to one of those accounts is its own category and weighted much higher in order to encourage that behavior. or specific campaign related activities. If you guys are pushing a certain product line or a certain initiative, if you're able to track that behavior as it relates to the campaign, then you could add that to the scorecard in order to push something that's a bit more timely or relevant to the business's objectives in that moment. All right, part two, before I move on, just a reminder, drop in the chat. Let us know if you got any thoughts, any questions. Part two is that objective scorecard. So that second tab on your dashboard. And that is going to be a longer time frame, either a week, a month, or a quarter. Totally up to you guys on what makes sense for your business. And on this scorecard, you are measuring objectives or lagging indicators, or maybe those results type of metrics. So as you can see here on Adela, she's got appointment set and new opportunities. Typically, we see around 3 to 5 metrics, so maybe a few less than what is on the activity scorecard, because these are kind of your key results, maybe what you measure quota on, really, really important performance metrics. Some of those popular metrics would be like opportunities created, meetings set, close won revenue. I know for my team of customer success managers, we've got renewals, expansions, all of that. Next, I wanted to talk about the productivity tab. So going back to scorecards being a useful tool to understand effectiveness, this is where you're really going to get that. And I wanted to talk about that next because after just going over the activity and objective score and talking about the metrics that make sense, this kind of illustrates why it makes sense to really categorize those metrics. And so the productivity tab is going to be your fourth tab on any group or manager dashboards in Ambition. So if anyone here, you go to your managerial dashboard, or maybe you go to your team's dashboard, you're probably familiar with the productivity tab or the quadrant, as we call it. But what it does is it plots historic activity and objective score performance over the last 30 days, and it analyzes that effectiveness on a per rep basis. You can also sort by ratio to see who your highest and lowest converting reps are. And so again, going back to the reason why it's important to bucket the two metrics and not have any overlap is because when you get to this graph, the plotting on the graph is only as accurate as how the metrics relate to each other. So let's say, for example, you have calls on both scorecards. That's going to bring this chart to be a little bit less accurate, or a less of a visual tool for you to understand effectiveness. Because what we're really looking at to see here is someone's activity or their inputs, is it leading to objective or their outputs? And so actually I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to have Nolan share from our demo site. He's going to pull open this exact productivity quadrant and kind of show you, as you hover over each rep, how would you read this? What would this mean?
Yeah, thank you, Emma. And yeah, great call out. For again, as someone who used to sell an Ambition and someone who uses activity and objective score, often it's really important, yeah, to make sure that those metrics are separate. I think a lot of us sometimes, one of the great parts about Ambition is the tracking capability, and sometimes our thought are, well, let's track on every, daily, monthly, etc. And while that seems like a good idea, again, it's important to very distinguish between your KPIs versus your quota in this instance. And if there's anything else you want to visualize, it's important. We have goals, other areas of the tool that we can do that. So yeah, really glad you shouted that out there, Emma. But I'm going to show you guys here the productivity quadrant in your managerial dashboard. So Carson is an example of a manager here. And again, when you're on your dashboard, it defaults to your employees for the last 30 days for activity and objective score. And as Emma mentioned, this is going to give you scores and a ratio that you can sort depending on who is converting at the highest or lowest. But what I want to take a look into here is this graph and give you guys some guidance into how we would read that, right? So high input, high output here, we have Yolanda. So she is the perfect example of, your A player, someone who you don't even have to worry about, honestly. Probably was fine before Ambition even came around. So she is in this top category. Now, down here is what we see with a lot of people who might not make it through sales, or maybe, for their tenure in our organization. That is the high input, low output. So that would be someone who's really spinning their wheels and not accomplishing quota. So that's kind of a tough spot to be in when you're working really hard but not hitting quota. Something is clearly missing there. But the beautiful part about this quadrant is that you can use it for coaching, use it for conversations, and maybe somebody down here, you might want to put up with someone in this top left here, in this low input, high output. Maybe someone who doesn't have to work very hard, but consistently hits quota. So how do you convert very well? And how can we maybe put you with someone down here who has the effort, but just isn't hitting their number? And then down here is your low input, low output. These are where we need all areas of improvement. But it lets you line them up on this graph and then make decisions. And again, the activity and objective score is nice because it gives you a definition for effort over output, but you're not exactly limited to that. So it's defaulted on your manager dashboard to these scores and time frame, but you can use this to kind of make conclusions for yourself in any category. And this also actually exists in the analytics tab under the quadrant section, so it does double in that area. So not to get too far off track, but if you ever want to go to analytics, you could go to quadrant and get really in the weeds here and build a pretty detailed one alongside the rest of our reporting options. See kind of a bigger screen here with a lot of options. So this can let you mix and match employees of different groups, et cetera, if you're an admin. But for today's example, we're just, in your own manager dashboard. So you can adjust these again to effort over output because it's what we have, or if it's something you want to make conclusions on, like calls to, let's say, appointment set, we could do something like this and then apply filters. And then see here, okay, look at this. 941 calls for Caleb, 11 appointments set. Geez, Russell's at 1,796 with 19. So now it's very similar to that activity objective score situation. And you could start searching the plotted graph here and clicking on folks for their information. And you can turn off the legend, turn off outliers. There's a couple different other options here to cater the graph to how you'd like to see it. But this is super valuable for you to coach, your employees. A lot of times we are spending time going through reports, finding the information to make these conclusions. I'm a very visual person, so it's really cool just to kind of be able to visually line up coaching conversations, things like that. Yeah, it's a really, really favorited tool here in Ambition. So, and anyone has any questions too. I think I'm kicking it back to you, Emma, but I know that was a quick overview there. So if anyone has any thoughts, comments, anything, I'd be happy to.
If anyone here is a fan of the productivity tab and uses that to help understand the correlation between activity and objective score, or the correlation between any two metrics, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know. Awesome. So just to kind of recap on this, that's really why it's important to keep your metrics separate if possible in your scorecard configuration. It just leads to it being a more valuable tool for your managers, again, to understand those inputs and outputs. And if you ever need help deciding what should go on your scorecard, or this metric, does it make more sense here or there? Please let us know. Reach out to support, reach out to your customer success manager, and we can help with that. Nolan, did you have something to add?
Somebody had a question. So the question was, is there a way to change the duration of the scorecard outside of what is already offered? The answer is yes, but it's at the organization level. So the one thing there is that everybody would have to be on the same time frame. So that is what you would be defaulted to with the scorecards there. Yeah, that's kind of how it currently stands.
Yep. But it can be adjusted. It's not required to be daily. Activity scores would either be daily or weekly. And then objective scores would be those longer time frames. And the reason why we want to keep the activity scores a shorter time frame is because our kind of our ideology is that it allows the manager to quickly identify and course correct behavior, versus if they're waiting for a month to understand a rep's call volume, it might be a little too long of a period to really get ahead of any downtrending performance. Whereas if it's a smaller target on a day or a week, we can really see change in performance and affect that change. But we can definitely dig into your exact use case and get connected with your team and see if some adjustments make sense for you guys. Awesome. So, a little bit about building your scorecard. So, one thing to know, like I just mentioned, if you'll work with your Ambition CSM or our support team to select the scorecard timeframe options. That's not something that is actually configurable on the regular admin end. And that's just because it kind of has some residual effects throughout the platform, especially if you're already historically using scorecards. So we just like to put a little bit of a safeguard around that. But if you do ever want to change, the example I'm going to show right now is a daily activity score. But if you ever want to play around with the other time frames, please just let your Ambition team know and we can help edit that for you. So when you go to build a scorecard, you're going to need three components. There's a lot of other advanced settings that we will dive into, but three components are required for building the scorecard. The first is one, choosing a metric. You technically can have as many metrics as you want, but like I said, on the activity scorecard, hovering around that five-ish metrics is probably ideal, just to keep your reps really laser focused and yeah, intentional with what they're doing for the day. The next is the target. So on this original scorecard creation page, you're going to set a general target for the team that you're building the scorecard for. So this one, for example, is for sales development reps. By building this, we're saying each SDR needs 80 calls per day on their scorecard. Now, if we ever need to customize that target for individuals for whatever reason, we can do that, and we'll talk about it when we talk about the advanced settings. And then the last thing you have to build your scorecard is the weight for that metric category. So very helpful when you go into our builder and you play around with the targets and the weights, it spits out this little sentence. So here you can see we have a calls target of 80, weighted at 60%. Therefore, for every call made, the rep will earn 0.75 on their scorecard. um, I find that kind of looking at and thinking through that little sentence really helps put into perspective the points that the rep can earn through these behaviors, and can kind of help you decide, okay, is this really painting the right picture to my reps? Am I encouraging them towards the most important or the most valuable behaviors through this scoring formula? And like I said, if you ever want some consultation or need help, please let your Ambition team know. We love playing around with the scorecard formulas and figuring out exactly what works for your team. For those weighting categories, the weighting must equal 100%. So you can see this one, for example, is 60%, but then the rest of the scorecard adds up to 100%. So going back to a perfect day, a perfect scorecard execution would leave a rep with a 100% on their scorecard. And so that's when you configure it. That's kind of the base level of what you need to know to set it up. And one thing I will say to any of you out there that maybe haven't played around with scorecards for your team and it might seem a little intimidating, I would always say start small, get something out there, see what resonates, see what sticks, get feedback from your teams, and plan on editing your scorecards. Even with really seasoned Ambition customers that have Ambition as a part of their daily motion, we still recommend a quarterly audit of the scorecards just to make sure that the targets are right, the metrics are still applicable. So don't let that fear of getting the perfect scorecard prevent you from moving forward with using this, because once you get it in front of your reps, you'll kind of start seeing what makes sense and what works for them, and you can add to it at any time. Some advanced scorecard settings, like I mentioned. So you will access the advanced settings through the little gear icon. If you don't see the gear icon when you go to edit your scorecards, just let your Ambition team know. We can turn it on for you. But walking through some of these advanced settings, so the first one we have here is the scoring type. So by default, our most common scoring type is going to be higher is better. So something like calls. 80 calls is better than one call. So higher is better. We love that. However, we do work with teams that are maybe more of like a support or service style team where some of their KPIs are actually lower is better. And that might be something like handle time, ticket response time, transfer rate, something like that. So we do offer that if your team has maybe some unique metrics. your ambition team is happy to talk with you and decide if lower is better as an option for you. But by default, it's higher is better, and that's going to be our more traditional, commonly used scoring types. The second advanced feature is scoring range. So I love this personally. And so here you can establish a minimum or maximum threshold for earning scorecard points. So for example, here on this scorecard, we're saying that a sales development rep needs 80 dials per day. Now, if we leave the scoring range blank, that means that one of those SDRs, they can be dialing all day long. They could dial 500 times and get points for all 500 of those calls. Maybe in some organizations, that's a great thing. More dials is good. I know in a lot of the customers we work with, there is kind of a sweet spot where if a rep goes beyond that, as far as the number of dials they're making, it's kind of an indicator that they maybe are not making quality dials or they're not really spending their time effectively. So I know here at Ambition, our team has a stop value of 120. So, yes, we want you to make 80 dials every single day. If you want some bonus points, you can go up to 120, but anything beyond that, it's just not going to credit you on the scorecard. Um, Ambition will still track the metric accurately. So if they did those 500 calls and you looked in analytics, it would still show that accurately. They just wouldn't get credit on the scorecard. You can establish a start value. I am not the biggest fan of that because I do think it incentivizes people to see their points accumulating. But maybe you want to say, hey, you get 0 points on your calls metric until you hit 20 calls for the day. So then between 20 and 120, that's where you're getting points. But anything below or above that, you don't. But everyone's unique, and like I said, you can play around with it. So you could play with a configuration if you're like, that didn't go over so well. Let's edit it here. Let's edit it there. You totally can. Next feature is the Smart Target tool. So like I said, we recommend evaluating your scorecard targets and configurations quarterly, and you can use the Smart Target tool to do that. By default, it's set to the 80th percentile. So by clicking the little magic wand and calculate target button, it's going to analyze the last 12 weeks of data for the reps in that group and tell you what the 80th percentile for that metric is. I find this is a great tool if you're using scorecards to help incrementally level your team's performance up. So maybe they started out at 50 dials a day. And then after 6 weeks, you run the numbers and you're like, oh, they're actually doing like 65 dials a day. Let's bump their target up to 65. Okay, now they're actually doing 75 dials a day. And so over a course of time, you're actually incrementally increasing their targets based on their performance. So it's a pretty helpful tool. Prorating. So if your organization leverages our out of office feature, then you'll have the ability to prorate or not your metrics. So by default, daily scorecards, the prorating is turned on. So if you have a daily activity score and one of your reps is marked out of office, automatically their targets for the day will be prorated to 0. Because if someone's out, you probably aren't wanting them to make dials. However, when we look at weekly, monthly, or quarterly scorecards, whether that's on the activity or the objective score, this prorate target toggle, you can toggle it back and forth on each metric. So where I see this a lot is maybe on the objective scorecard. Maybe you've got appointments held and closed won revenue. Maybe for appointments held, we prorate the target based on their out of office days. So if someone is out of office a number of days, Ambition's going to recalculate that appointments held target because they're not in office to hold those appointments. However, that closed won revenue, maybe even if they went on a 2-week vacation, they're still accountable for their revenue target for the month of $20,000. That doesn't change just because they went out of office. So you can really do it on the per metric basis, which is really useful. Love that feature. And then finally, set custom targets. So like I mentioned, all of these targets, can be customized per rep. So 80 dials per rep is what we've set here. However, if you need to go in and ramp folks up or make adjustments for quota, revenue is very commonly set at the individual level because each employee, based on their book of business or the account segment they work, might be a little bit different. So with that set custom targets button, it gives you a chart of every rep and allows you to set those targets on the individual level. So those are our advanced scorecard features. Nolan, anything to add about scorecards or any of this?
No, the one thought I had is just, yeah, it's meant to be a dynamic conversation. I think there's a common theme. Sometimes we get really eager, excited, hopeful for these to roll out in an appropriate manner. But yeah, candidly, I think the dynamic conversation works better. I know when I was selling, we had our basic metrics on there, and I was pretty bad at prospecting at a certain point, like not really getting people in my book of business. And normally that's not something you're really tracking too much on a report, but we were able to think outside the box and get it in Ambition. And by changing it and doing, and that was for me, and we did similar situations for other folks too, but that allowed me to kind of hit my goal and drastically just improve my day to day. It wasn't a matter of just upping or lowering the targets of what's already existing. Um, so yeah, it meant to be a moving conversation, and that's what I think makes this the most valuable. So yeah, that was the one thought I had as we were going through it. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Doug mentioned we use the custom targets feature to change revenue targets for the full role based on seasonality. Yeah, that's awesome. You can definitely at the top of that adjust it so it kind of moves incrementally as the year goes on. Or I love that. That's really smart. Advanced ambition use. Yeah, I always say when people are rolling this out, I always say this is as much of a learning tool for managers and leaders as it is a tracking tool for the sales rep. Because as a leader, you do get to learn where there are gaps, what is working, what isn't working, where do we need to increase or decrease the target. I think one customer that I worked with to set up their scorecards a few years ago, they came in really ambitious. They were so excited. They were like, our reps are not making dials. They're not doing X, Y, and Z. We're making this scorecard and we're putting all these crazy targets on there because that's what they should be doing, but they're not. And so I had to say, look, if they're not doing that today and you make this scorecard with these triple the amount targets, they're going to log in and they're going to be really demotivated because all of their scorecards are going to say they're at 20%, 30%. And they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm a bad sales rep. I'm terrible. I hate ambition. All of these things. I said, that's not really motivating. What I encourage them to do is lower those initial expectations, warm people up, because immediately you're gonna see a jump, even if people are traditionally lower performing or even they're just kind of status quo. Once you roll out scorecards, no matter what, just because of the visibility and kind of the gamification of it, you will see a jump. And then people get warmed up to it, and then that becomes their new norm. And then you jump them again, and then you jump them again. And then 3 months, 6 months goes by before you know it, and everyone is at that level that you expect and in good, encouraging spirits about it, and not like, oh my gosh, look how embarrassing my scores are so low. So there's definitely like a psychological strategy around making these really effective. But it's fun. Oh, one last thing I'll call out on the manager dashboard or a group dashboard. When you're looking at the scorecards, we have this grid view option that then positions the scorecard per rep and then per metric. I love this view because it's so easy to identify who's in the green, who's in the orange, who's in the yellow for each metric, and you can see everyone's specific numbers at a glance. Absolutely love this view. Highly recommend checking this one out if you haven't, if you don't regularly use this view. Okay, awesome. That's all we had on scorecards for today. Like I said, if you've got anything, throw it in the chat. Q&A, happy to talk more about scorecards or any other ambition topic, but Nolan's going to take it over and talk a little bit about some of our recent releases. So we've got challenge, insights, and then our snapshot agenda items.
Yeah. So I'm sure, excuse me, a lot of you probably got some email from your CSM or some marketing from Ambition alluding to challenge insights. So hopefully everyone on here knows what I'm talking about. But if you don't, we're going to start from scratch and kind of tell you what it is. And luckily, there isn't really too much to learn, more just a lot to enjoy. So basically, um, for Ambition, for those that have been customers for a while, you know that we have made a lot of improvements in the coaching sphere as well as the AI sphere moving forward in that direction, which has been super cool. It's been great to see people get a lot of use out of that. But just like anything, we're always trying to improve and see where else can we, keep moving the needle. And one thing, that a lot of customers use us for is gamification. So why not use some of that AI in terms of gamification and benefit people there, saving them time. So all of you know, Ambition does a great job getting rid of that admin work when building competitions. We don't have to like do the mathematical scoring in our head. It's quick to go build the competitions out. Um, and yeah, we're saving time to get those off and running. But as you guys know, oftentimes we're competing on a variety of metrics, which often involves a winner with a total score over a certain amount of time. So normally what happens is somebody will win the competition or it just happens and you as a manager go back, assess the scores, see your points, kind of look at different days, maybe in the analytics tab, and make conclusions from there. But we're in a world that's like ever simplifying our day to day. So we want to do exactly that, right? Take out that middle process and just give you the results so you can just digest that yourself versus doing any research. So that's what Challenge Insights is. And it's on for coaching customers. Some people have it turned on as well, even if you're not coaching. If you don't have it turned on, you don't see it, please let us know. We're happy to let you guys or flip this on for you, make it known, make it available, but it should be on for you all. So it's gonna exist exactly in the regular spot you would normally go and find and interact with challenges. So I'm in the manage portion here just for the sake of instruction, but you can really click into any competition and this tab will be there. So we have some active competitions right now on our demo site, but let's go to a finished one to kind of see what happens. So SDR weekly calls throwdown might be a good one. We'll go ahead and view this competition. And something you're going to immediately notice is kind of a UI change. So when we jump in here, looks kind of similar, kind of different than what we're used to, but has all the same information basically. We have the score, your ambition projection, which are calculated, again, as it says here, analyzing the last 12 weeks of metric data to kind of give you an idea of what that employee should or might score, allows us to kind of maybe get a little expectations involved, do a little, friendly competition there. And then we have kind of the scoring on the side and the criteria for this competition. But this new piece is an additional tab. So you'll see insights here and we can click into that and immediately the AI is going to work. So what it's going to do, instead of just giving you a winner and the parameters of the competition, it's going to identify trends, moments where people are passing one another, certain call outs for behaviors. So just giving you a lot of in-depth information for you to either give back to your executives to show how the competition went, either use it yourself to see if I want to do this again or just present to the team. And you can, it's off to the races from there. So what I want to do is run you guys through some of this here and show you kind of what we're summarizing. So again, this is a weekly calls throwdown. So immediately it gives an overview of the competition. So focuses on calls metric here with 24 competitors, 5 days. Shows significant variation in performance with final scores ranging from 139, to 449. Now we start to get a little more detailed. So Emily Cunningham dominated the competition with 449 calls, significantly ahead of second place David. So that's kind of right there, just kind of a cool call out. She's way ahead of the rest. So what's going on there? And third place is Isaac. Top 3 performers consistently maintained higher call volumes compared to their competitors. And then we go even deeper. So success factors. Emily demonstrated exceptional performance with consistently high daily call volumes, averaging 86 to 95 per day. So giving you insight into maybe why she's so far ahead. David and Isaac, steady progression, but their averages were 65 to 70. And this is just a calls competition, but as you can imagine, if you do multiple metrics, you can start to get a lot of different insights from this. So down here, you have key patterns, notable progressions, projection accuracy analysis. So how close and how accurate did they perform to what Ambition predicted them to. Historical comparisons are here, so changes, patterns, insights, things like that. And then finally, we go down and have a score breakdown as well as the rank progression and scores, who's passing who. This is honestly, I'm not a manager, so maybe this isn't the best part of it, but it's my favorite part because I just think it's so cool throughout the duration of a competition to see who's passing who, and especially if someone got down really low, what was the cause for the comeback, and can we apply that to everybody so they can have something similar? Especially if we already have overachievers that could use that bit of information. So this is really, really cool. Again, it's giving TLC to competitions. This AI piece. As I mentioned, people are sending it to their executives. They're using this to summarize um, their challenges, and then even I've had some people thinking outside of the box, which is super cool. And that's using this even just for the information itself. So you guys know, like in Ambition, we can create competitions that are in hidden mode. Um, so what I actually have people doing, and it's actually here when you create it, they'll create it in hidden mode, and then therefore nobody's getting alerted of a competition, none of that, but it contains a group of individuals they're focused on, as well as the metrics they want to see. And then they will go access that AI insights just to give them a summary of how things are going for that initiative. So it's really cool to obviously give um, rhyme and reason to your competitions, but even if you're not doing it for that, we've had some people think outside the box and say, I would love to just get these summaries for myself just to read them and kind of help that start my day. So really, really cool stuff. We're really excited about this. And again, it's just that tab that lives there right in competition. So you can easily find it. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us as well.
Awesome. Do you want to show really quick how to add the metric and pipeline
Yeah,
snapshots?
sure thing. So that would be the other release we have going on or had happen, excuse me. Um, And I know I was just mentioning coaching earlier, and so I imagine most of us here might be coaching, and if you're not, still might be valuable for the future. But um, the snapshot item is a change from the metric snapshot that we had. It is now just one word snapshot, kind of like HBO went to Max, kind of like that. Just snapshot, but it's cooler and it gives you more options, and that's kind of what we want to show you today. So for those that are familiar with coaching, I'm in the manage piece here, and I'm going to build a program. This is probably familiar to a lot of y'all. We'd fill out what we'd want to, what weekly, one-on-one, monthly review, etc. We set the recurrence, participants. This feature is in the agenda building section here. So that's where metric snapshot has always been. It now just lives in place here because now we have the ability to do metric and pipeline. Pipeline snapshots is an additional tool that costs extra. If you're interested in that, we're happy to give you some light into that. We released it a while ago. But it's now just snapshot for the sole purpose of one, delineating between the two, and then the actual metric snapshot itself has a bit more variation than what it used to now. So what we have here are two distinct options that we didn't used to have. So in the past, you would do one metric per question. So if we were, coaching on your revenue and we wanted to see your revenue for the month, we would have to ask a question regarding that. Then, if we want to see your revenue for the quarter or the year, we would have to follow up with another question and put the metric in there. And then you're having a bunch of questions that are kind of all asking towards the same thing. So this is simplifying that for you here. So we have the option to view one or more metrics with the same time frame. So maybe that's a bunch just for the week. Or this could be one metric for two different time frames if you'd like. So again, in that example I mentioned there, where maybe it's monthly and quarterly you want to see revenue, you can do that. So it's very similar to the old way of doing it. You would just select the metric itself. Now you just have the option for the two time frames here. And similarly with this one, you would select multiple metrics. They would appear here, and then you would select the time frame and then cater your question towards what you just put in there. So this is a great adjustment. Just prevents one-on-ones from being kind of long, overwhelming with questions when we're all just trying to get to brass tacks. So this kind of helps simplify it and keep things dialed into one place. So a lot of positive feedback on this so far. Been convenient for a lot of people to say the least. So excited for you all to start using this. And yeah, again, just like Insights, if you have any questions, reach out to us.
Awesome. Anyone have any questions or any other topics we can go over today? Anything ambition related, feel free to drop it in the chat in the Q&A. Me and Nolan are here to help to answer any questions. I know while I was prepping for this webinar, my brain was spinning on um, updates we can make to our team scorecard. So excited to do some new stuff. Hey, Justine, I see your question, how to reach out. I just contacted your customer success manager. His name's Scott Cook. And he's going to be reaching out to make sure that you get the right permissions. And then I know your internal point of contact at T-Mobile is Gordana Clark. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, but that's someone who can help you internally as well. But I've let Scott from our team know who he's on the account for you guys. So he will reach out today to make sure you get all set up. Awesome, awesome. Well, like I said, this recording and the resources will all get sent out in an email. So if this is something you want to share with any colleagues that maybe help configure or update your scorecards, this could be useful for them. And then next month, we're talking workflows. So again, if you want to invite anybody, we'll make sure that's in the recap. We would love to have more people from your teams, especially next month workflows. If you've got some managers that you'd like to see leverage that more, send them our way and we'll make sure that they get trained up. But have a great Tuesday and we will talk to everyone soon.